When Generation 1 of Pokemon first released, the world went crazy. In other news, the sky is blue, the grass is green, and the fog is coming. Pokemania had taken the world by storm, and it's easy to see why when you look at those first Pokemon games. It was a wonderful template and proof of concept of what the series could be. It had a cool concept, a ton of Pokemon, basic story, and it set up what would later become the biggest multimedia franchise in the world. However, it had quite a few issues. The story was basic, mechanics were bugged or needed to be fleshed out, and of course, people wanted more. Because of the massive success, the next games in the series were immediately put into development. The games were still being developed for the Game Boy, and there were big expectations Game Freak was put under now due to just how massive the games had got. Everyone had their eyes on the series. They needed to make a new game that would make those people happy, make those people play the game and re-experience the magic, and, more importantly, buy copious amounts of merchandise. When Pokemon Gold and Silver finally released after a delay in 1999 in Japan, 2000 in Australia and North America, and 2001 in Europe, the games sold well. Way more than Game Freak expected, and Crystal, releasing just a bit later, was also successful. The games were generally reviewed well, but do they still hold up over 20 years later? The game starts with the color blue and the very important question of what your gender is. Dude, I don't know, I guess this? This question is not in Gold and Silver. Crystal invented the concept of girls. You're then asked what the time is. Do I look like a clock to you? You then get introduced to what a Pokemon is, as if you don't already know somehow. I entered my name and left home before getting interrupted by Mom teaching me how phones work. I mean, to be fair, it was the year 2000. That's basically 20 million years ago. I then entered a lab and get told by the professor, Professor Elm, to just take a Pokemon because he's too lazy to make a 5-minute trip to pick something up. I pick my starter and leave. I go to a really interesting town only to ignore it and head north to a guy named Mr. Pokemon. He gives me an egg and Professor Oak gives me a Pokedex and asks me to fill it with every Pokemon that ever existed before 2002. I then left and got a call from Elm saying I needed to hurry back. On the way, I encountered this weird guy who had another one of the starters from Elm's lab. Going back, I found out that this weird guy robbed Elm. I'm asked by the officer here what his name is. Well, he said his name was ... I don't want to lie to the cops, I think that's illegal. I then hand over the egg and he's just like, yeah, you can keep that Pokemon. So, I do. I then leave and head up north to Violet City, where I go into the Sprout Tower and fight the same Pokemon over and over and over again, until this guy flashes me. Oh, yeah, is here and he just leaves. I then go and fight the first gym leader, Faulkner, who uses birds, despite them not being real, so easy battle. Now that I have one badge, I can head south and go through the Union Cave. Union Cave is a pretty simple place. You just follow a pretty direct path, a few trainers along the way, and you're done. Upon entering Azalea Town, I encounter this totally not suspicious guy. I go talk with this old guy and he yells about Team Rocket despite them being disbanded 3 years ago. He runs off and I follow him down a well where he broke his back and later died due to his injuries in the hospital 3 days later. I go investigate the well and find Team Rocket. Yeah, it turns out they're back and are doing evil things again or something, I don't know. Now they're cutting off Slowpoke tails to make a profit by selling them. This is apparently a bad thing, but according to the Pokemon Sun Pokedex entry for them, their tail comes off naturally sometimes. It doesn't even feel any pain and it grows back, so honestly, Team Rocket can do whatever the fuck they want. I have to stop them to progress the plot, and after that's done, the ghost of Kurt thanks me and now I can challenge the gym leader Bugsy. I try to leave town and get stopped by who I swiftly defeated and then he called me weak. Motherfucker, I beat you! Welcome to the Ilex Forest. It's a forest. I needed to help this guy get his Farfetch'd back. Easy, just chase it around a bit and lure it back. Got the HM cut and let me progress through the place. Now I arrive in Goldenrod City, home of gambling, shopping, a radio tower, and a gym. I challenged the gym leader Whitney and took down her Miltank real fast. She was a baby and wouldn't give me the badge, so I tried to leave, got told to talk to her again, and then she gave me the badge. Good job, Game Freak. For the first time in a Pokemon game, a gym leader was given a personality trait. I then head north to find this tree that I can't just walk past for some reason. I go back to the flower shop in Goldenrod and get a squirt bottle. I squirt on the tree and it comes to life. I then catch it and move on to Ecruteak City, where I immediately beat these people in battle and get gifted a Surf HM. I then enter this burnt tower and find question marks yet again. I beat him and then I fell and broke my legs. I found these weird looking Pokemon and this guy named Eugene told me that Suicune is such a cool Pokemon. Anyway, I go fight Morty, the ghost gym leader, and oh gee, I won. I head west, find this thing again, and head over to Olivine City. I get told by question marks that the gym leader is stupid for showing human emotion. Ooh. I climb to the top of the lighthouse and find that Ampharos at the top is sick and needs medicine from Cianwood. I break my legs a few more times before going to Cianwood, get the medicine, and fight Chuck, the fighting gym leader. I return with the medicine and go over to the gym to fight Jasmine and her steel types for yet another badge. Now I head east of Ecruteak and find that something is going on at the Lake of Rage. I head north to find this weird looking Gyarados. After encountering it, I get told by this guy named Lance that I'm pretty good with Pokemon and that he needs my help with Team Rocket. I go back to Mahogany and Lance just hyper beams a human being. I then had to go through Team Rocket's hideout, which is just battle after battle against the same type of Pokemon. Incredibly boring. I get told that Team Rocket is sending a radio signal that is forcing Pokemon to evolve, and this machine is what's causing it. To stop it, I had to take down the Electrode on either side. This one looks pretty weird, but it blew itself up so it wasn't an issue, and all the others did as well, which made my job easier. I then go and fight Price, the Ice Gym Leader, and get the 7th badge. Upon leaving the gym, I get a call from Elm saying that Team Rocket took over the radio tower. I go there and climb up the tower while fighting the grunts. This part of the game sucks. It's the big climax of the Team Rocket story, but I don't feel any challenge going through the waves of grunts. I don't even feel like their goal is really all that threatening. I'm basically just mashing A for an hour, and that's no fun. When I have to go to the basement, I get stopped by question marks again, who I beat, and he says that maybe giving a shit about your pets is a good thing. I then finished up all the grunts by mashing A, kicking them out, saving the director, and he gives me the clear bell. I took this to Ecruteak, where these old guys tested me in some trivial battles, then told me to go ahead to the Tin Tower. In the Tin Tower, I find this thing again, and I caught it pretty easily. Eugene comes in and talks about how cool I am or something, then I make my way to Blackthorn City, heading through the ice path along the way. In Blackthorn City, I fight Claire and beat her after many attempts. She doesn't give me the badge because she's a little bitch, so I go to the Dragon's Den, tell these old guys that I love Pokemon a few times over, then I get the badge. Now it is time to become the champion. I went to Elm's lab and got a Master Ball, then I went east to Kanto. Yes, in this game you have 2 whole regions. Most of Kanto is locked behind being champion, so I made my way to the Pokemon League, fighting question marks along the way, and making my way to the Elite Four. The Elite Four in this game consists of Will, Koga, Bruno, and Karen, choosing Psychic, Poison, Fighting, and Dark, respectively. The Elite Four in this game remains pretty easy. I found that I was able to solo all the fights with just 1 or 2 Pokemon. It really wasn't a challenge at all. The champion, however, does pose a few more problems. Lance is the champion of the Pokemon League, using Gyarados, Charizard, Aerodactyl, and 3 separate Dragonites, all of whom are underleveled. This fight posed a lot more risk and was overall trickier, but it still wasn't really too challenging for me. After this, I get brought by Lance into the Hall of Fame, and the game ends. Overall, the main story of this game was very boring. I feel like the story was even worse than Gen 1, and I found that one to be pretty mediocre as well. At least with Gen 1, Team Rocket not only showed up more throughout the main story, but they felt more serious and more of a threat thanks to having a leader. Whereas here, they barely showed up and felt more like a ragtag group trying to be like Team Rocket compared to an actual threat. Outside of the 3 instances of Team Rocket showing up, the goal of the story being to collect 8 badges and become champion is exactly the same as it was the first generation. The most noteworthy thing about the story is your rival, Silver, who I named question marks. While Blue was a bit of a dick, Silver is a big old bag of them. He steals and considers Pokemon to be nothing more than mere tools. He shares a lot of qualities with Team Rocket, yet he works against them. This is explored more in the remakes, but here it's just a little oddity with this character. That's all I really have to say for the story. I mean, there's not much here in the first place, but luckily, there's a whole nother region to explore. The same one from the last game. After I reload, I get an SS ticket from Professor Elm, and now I have access to Kanto. I take the SS Aqua and arrive in Vermilion City. The first thing I do is take on Surge and get the Thunder Badge. The main goal of the post-game is to go from gym to gym and get all 8 Kanto badges. Surge is pretty easy, his team isn't that hard to beat with a ground type. I then go north to Saffron City and beat Sabrina to get her badge as well, just like that. Over at the power plant, I learned that the generator had a piece stolen, and instead of the officer at the scene going to investigate, I am the one who is asked to go do it instead. I go to Cerulean, beat up the Team Rocket guy, and then chase Misty back to the gym so I could get the parts and beat her in battle for a badge. I return the parts, get a new radio card, and go on a lightning round of badges. Boom, 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 boom. I send Blue back to Viridian as he's the new gym leader there, and then I take him down. With that, Professor Oak says I could go to Mount Silver. I climb to the top, and there is our final challenge. Red. Red has an insanely overleveled team compared to everything else around him. He could be a bit of a challenge. Beat him, and the credits roll once again. Okay, so overall Kanto isn't all that long. You could easily get it done in like 3 hours if you tried. It's a pretty cool post-game, being able to travel back to Kanto as your reward for finishing Johto, but I have a few complaints. For one, the levels of wild Pokemon don't scale, so it makes it incredibly annoying to grind, especially when you need to grind for Red. There's also a lot of Pokemon locked behind Kanto that just completely kills any chance of you using them because of their levels. For example, Houndour can only be found between Saffron and Celadon at night, and it's only level 20. This ensures no one would use it in these games. There's also just not really too much here other than fighting the Kanto gym leaders, but honestly, this game in general doesn't have too much going for it other than the main story and Pokédex. Overall, I'd say this post-game is pretty good. It's fun to go back to Kanto and fight the gym leaders, and the fight with Red is still one of the coolest in the series, but there are some flaws that really hold it back. Of course, this game has a brand new Pokédex, and oh boy, this one is a pain in the ass. Most of it is completed by running back and forth in tall grass, catching Pokemon, and evolving them. Pretty simple, but it's very, very grindy. Outside of that, they introduced a few new gameplay mechanics such as the day-night cycle, where different Pokemon appear depending on the time of day, as well as the world looking different. This game also comes with a weekly calendar, which can affect certain things such as the bug catching contest. This is an incredible addition. It helps the world feel more alive. The Pokemon changes mimic sleep patterns as some animals may come out and go to bed at night. It's incredible. While it doesn't make it more annoying to complete the Pokédex, it's honestly all worth it for that added realism to the world. There's also the bug catching contest on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, where you catch the best bug you can to win prizes, and this shit is rigged. This one kid over here keeps winning every time you play. This is bullshit. Still pretty neat to have an added gameplay mode, I guess, even if it's heavily rigged. This game also comes with the introduction of roaming legendaries, and I fucking hate these guys. So every time you change areas, they change as well. You have to pray they're on your route, encounter them, then you only get one turn to do anything. That's annoying enough. You can use Mean Look to trap them, but of course they have Roar, so good fucking luck keeping them trapped. Legendaries are already bullshit and a pain in the ass with their low catch rates, and roaming legendaries just make them take way longer to catch. Who even finds this fun? I'll tell you. Nobody. It's stupid and dumb, and why do they keep doing this for 4 more generations after this? With the new generation, Game Freak made a whole 100 new Pokemon for players to use throughout their journey, and honestly, these ones just aren't as good, I'm sorry. The new Pokemon suffer from issues of strength and availability throughout the game, and it really hinders your ability to use the new guys rather than go back to the Gen 1 classics. A lot of Gen 2 Pokemon are very weak and not really viable for a serious team, unless you want a challenge. In Gen 1, it feels like most Pokemon you find are perfectly valid and strong team candidates with their stats, but in Gen 2, only about half of these guys would really be any use on any team. There are a few good and strong Pokemon, such as the starters, Ampharos, Crobat, and Heracross, but so many others, such as Delibird, Yanma, Quillfish, are so weak, and there are so many better alternatives, why would you use them? This also leads to an issue of availability, as many of the Pokemon you find before post-game are just Kanto Pokemon. It makes a bit of sense, Kanto has 50% more Pokemon than Johto, but it's kind of disappointing when Pokemon like Houndour or Octillery, excluding Swarms, have their viability on teams killed for being Kanto locked. It should be an easy fix too, just like move Pokemon over to the Johto region, preferably early on as well to maximize their usability of them, and boom, problem solved. It just feels odd that they would make a Pokemon kill its usefulness, then be like, cool, now market the fuck out of that guy. I feel like I've been a bit too negative, so you know what's something I did like? The improvements to the battle system, baby, woo! First of all, 2 big improvements based on just how it looks, experience, and sprites. In Gen 1, you had no clue as to how close you were to leveling up. Each Pokemon you beat is just says, hey, you got this much experience, cool, how much to level up? I don't know, go to the fucking summary screen. In Gen 2 now, you have an experience bar showing just how much you get, which is a small thing but overall incredibly handy and a welcome addition to the UI. There's also the Pokemon sprites which look even better than before. Gen 1 had some rough sprites, even worse than the original Japanese red and green, and while they were improved in yellow, the Gen 2 sprites overall look much cleaner and more appealing. Upon leveling up for the first time, you may notice the special stat has also been split into special attack and special defense. This is also a great change, it just makes more sense for them to be separate rather than be together in one stat for calculations like in Gen 1. Though this does come at the cost of destroying the viability of some Pokemon such as poor Gyarados. They also introduced new types, Dark and Steel, pretty cool. These were introduced to counter the Psychic type, which dominated Gen 1. Steel was given a resistance to Psychic, Dark was super effective against Psychic, and they actually coded Ghost correctly so that it was strong against Psychic as well. Overall, the type chart became a lot more balanced for it, so good job Game Freak, you did it. You broke the broken type, and there will never be a single type dominating the meta ever again. Exclusive to Pokemon Crystal, the Battle Tower is a battle facility just next to Olivine City. In it, you can bring 3 Pokemon and fight trainers in level brackets. This is a precursor to later generations and their battle facilities, but here, it's just kinda whatever. You do a series of 7 battles, and then you get some vitamins, and then you're done. I guess I shouldn't complain too much considering it's Crystal exclusive content and it's a series of tough battles you could do to get better, but honestly, it's just not interesting to do at all. It is interesting how this was only available in Japan through the mobile system GB, which was some crazy technology for the time. Connecting a mobile phone to a console to make literal microtransactions was something unheard of at the time. But you could just do that with this game, it was incredible. In Japan, you could also use this system to get the GS Ball, which is an exclusive item to the Japanese versions of the game, in which you could take it to Kurt, and then he would analyze it, and after a day, you could use it to go and catch Celebi, the mystical Pokemon of this game. This is the first time in the games they had an actual event for a mystical Pokemon. In Gen 1, you just go to a Toys R Us or something and they trade a Mew to you. But here, they had a specific event just for one Pokemon, and it was amazing. Of course, this was only available in Japan, but when they re-released Pokemon Crystal for the Virtual Console in 2018, they brought it back, and this time, it could be used by everyone, which was incredible. So overall, what do I think of these games? They're pretty alright. The second generation of Pokemon had a lot to live up to after the massive and unprecedented explosion of popularity the series had gotten. While in retrospect the first games weren't masterpieces of art, they still hold up as a fun little RPG adventure to come back to, and Gold, Silver, and Crystal are the same in that regard. None of these games are ones I would hold as a standard for gaming. The story is boring, the Pokédex is a grind, and they don't have much else outside of those. But even now, coming back to them 23 years later, they're still a ton of fun to pick up and play, battle gym leaders, see your Pokemon evolve, and become the very best, like no one ever was. They're not games that will absolutely blow you away, but they're not shit shows either. They have their charm, set a baseline for the series to build off, and demonstrated the power of the Game Boy while it was taking its final kneel. After these games, the next generation left the original Game Boy line, and given the hardware and limitations of their time, they did an excellent job for pushing one last hurrah for the original Pokemon games.